West Hill United is a progressive spiritual community where how you live is more important than what you believe. West Hill United is a people, a place, an idea. We are a community living out of a progressive faith, striving to make a positive difference in our own lives, the lives of others, and the world. Join us Sundays at 10:30 a.m. or connect with us at any time.
Our first reading is an extract from Visionworks 2015. Visionworks is our guiding document. It articulates our shared values and reflects what we hold to be of utmost significance in our community life. It calls us to examine ourselves in light of these values as we set priorities and make decisions, both individually and as a community. As individuals with diverse backgrounds and viewpoints, we come together, opening ourselves to new ideas that may challenge our previously held perspectives. What we share is a reverence for life that moves us to seek truth, live fully, care deeply, pursue justice, and make a difference in the world. We respect individual differences insofar as they are not harmful or disrespectful of others. We draw insight and wisdom from historic religious traditions and evolving ethical and philosophical thought. From these sources, we distill the core values that we believe are foundational to positive relationships with ourselves, others, all life, and our planet. Second reading is entitled Persephone Distorted. Author not known. The initials are MHN. This short poem talks to the reality of daily living and its untidiness. Let July be July, and let August be August, and let yourself be, just be, even in the uncertainty. You don't have to fix everything. You don't have to solve everything. And you can still find peace and grow in the wild of changing things. Offered as wisdom for the journey.
May we walk in its light.
I will keep thanking Florence till Florence can hear me. There we go. Thanks, Florence. Just the microphone. The topic today and next week is a dip into the ideas in what West Hill long ago chose to do about an invitation from the larger church to perhaps think about a statement of faith. And some of you know this history very, very well. Some of you were involved with it. And I'll use this middle of the room as the example of what we ran into very quickly, was that if we started saying what we believe is real, what we believe is authoritative, what we believe, we would be drawing a line, well, I'll say down the middle of a room and crisscross and all over the place, because we believe differently about different things. There's people in this room that believe very different things than I do about maybe what's real or not. That's not what we wanted to matter. What we wanted to matter is how do we live with each other, even with those different beliefs. I think one of the lines Florence just gave us was, we respect anyone's decision to hold a belief as long as it causes no harm. Now that brings an ethical issue up because there's a difference in opinion of what is harm. For instance, there's just the issue of abortion, the issue of gay marriage, the issue of medically assisted death. That is, people feel differently on what's causing harm in that situation. And people can feel different what's causing harm in a particular situation. So it's a complex thing. But we wanted to go on the idea of values. So long, long ago, 2005, I believe, was the first one. And we put together a bunch of resources, and every time it's been renewed, because it's been renewed every 5 years, which says it's not a static explanation of our values, and we might feel differently later on. Oh my goodness, could you picture yourself 25 years ago and what you thought was right and what you thought was, and I'm hoping it's grown since then, and you might have reversed some stuff, and you might have adopted some stuff, and you might be different, and that's a growing good thing. So what we did, and every 5 years we've put this. Now my next slide, if you could show that next slide on the PowerPoint, please. There. We took a look, because we weren't inventing the wheel, we took a look at other statements of faith or statements of belief or statements and values. And the listing here, if you would like, let me know, and I can send you the entire document. I think it's 25 pages of the different people that have tried to put together what they believe and what they value, what values they think are important. So the first one I chose, maybe it's because of my background, and I'm going to be very blunt here, the Baptist Convention of Ontario and Quebec. I was part of that world. And so their statement of faith is there. And it has the same values as we would hold up. And it also contains a great number of beliefs, which at the time I believed with all my heart and soul, and which I no longer believe with any part of me. But I still believe in the values. So I don't believe that some of the things they say are true, but I believe in the values that they hold up. It's just a different semantical way of putting that. But for instance, the headlines in the New York Times was that the Southern Baptist Convention, where I was actually baptized, the Southern Baptist Convention of America, the largest Protestant denomination in America, making it one of the biggest in the world, and the headline was, Southern Baptist Convention is purging their churches from female ministers. Now, the word purging had a real weight to it, not just removing, but purging. So they have many of the same values, but there's a belief they have that to me causes harm. To them, the female ministers were causing harm. They actually aligned it with adultery. If we have female ministers, it's going to lead to adultery and witchcraft. Today, in 2023. So their beliefs, we might have some difficulty with. Their values, we might hold together. So that was the first one. The next one was the United Church of Canada, and you're familiar with its doctrines. And so we looked at that, and we found the same values, but a lot of beliefs we might not have felt comfortable with. The next one was the Unitarian Universalists, and some of you have been in there. Ethically strong language, good stands on whatever, very little about belief, mostly about what we hold as important in how we treat each other. The next one is the Ethical Culture Society. If Ellen Dinerman was here and her husband, she was a leader in the Ethical Culture Society, which is a group that started in the 1800s in the United States of America to say we would like to hold meetings just like this and only be about our values and ethics. And they are an amazing group of people, very small. Very small. They try to get work with children, and it's very hard to get children involved. But we looked at their statement because it was chock full of values. And the second last one was the Humanist Manifesto. And the interesting point I wanted to get about this one is there's a 1 and a 2 and a 3. 1933, 1975, and 2000 and something. I can't remember. But they have redone their manifestos about humanist values. Same as we have done. And what they printed, which if you ask me, I will send you. It's very good reading. At the next one they do, like they did one in 33, and then in the 75 one they say, this is our statement, and this previous statement is now considered part of the historical record, but not what they're using. So that they still honor it, because that's what we thought then. And that's now in the historical record of the humanist group, and now we're seeing it this way. And they did the same thing in the 2000s, so now the number 1 and number 2 go into the historical record, honoring them, but not using that as the fresh idea. So beautifully, that's what we've done with Visionworks, is every 5 years, we're faster than them. Every 5 years, we take a look at it and do it. And the last one is the Council of Secular Humanism, which has chock full of values, but they put some beliefs in there because they're very strong on the separation of church and state. And they really make strong claims on that because they believe that when you meld them, you're causing harm. And there are other people, particularly in countries we read about a lot, they're saying, no, we need them together and it's causing harm if we don't. So none of the values on these groups solve the problems. People have to solve the problems, but we hold those values up. So John McKechnie in Scotland and Doug Richards in Woodstock are part of the team that put this most recent Visionworks together. And John thought it would be a splendid idea if he shared with you some things, and I'm going to turn it to him and Doug right now. John, and I haven't seen Doug yet, but I'm positive he's there. Could we just see the screen, the gallery view of everyone?
He is there.
Gallery view.
Yeah, Doug is there, Scott.
Okay, excellent. I just haven't seen him yet.
I am
Doug,
here.
There we are. Okay.
Doug, do you want to start with your reflection on the process of doing the Visionworks project?
Yeah, I'd like to talk about the process a little bit, mostly from my own point of view. In January of 2020, Kathy and I started our 60th year of marriage with a wonderful trip to Disney World.
Excuse me, Doug, can I interrupt? Could we spotlight Doug, please?
Pardon?
I wonder if the tech team could spotlight Doug so we can see Doug speaking and not the statement of faith slide, please. We want to see your face, Doug. Excellent.
Okay, I can see my face very well. Let me know when it's time to start. How's that?
Perfect.
Okay, and you can hear me fine, I presume. Just to go back, Kathy and I in 2020 started our 60th year of marriage with a wonderful trip to Disney World. But then along came COVID. So we celebrated our 60th wedding anniversary confined to our small apartment in Woodstock. But then Scott Kearns asked me if I would join 4 other people to rewrite West Hill's Visionworks document. I felt deeply honored and simultaneously terrified because I knew West Hill's reputation for modeling what a 21st century church could be like. And because Visionworks articulates West Hill's core values, many people would have great expectations as we struggled to find the words that might help them rediscover and strengthen the value that gives their lives meaning and purpose. But as Anita, Emily, John, Scott, and I immersed ourselves in this work, the dark despair of COVID began to lift as week after week we worked together on this challenge. Whenever an idea was needed, someone came up with it. Whenever the right word was needed, it was there. Scott's computer, though, was not always our friend. But when it came to composing beautiful prose at lightning speed, typing and modifying it while we were throwing ideas and phrases at him, Scott was always up to the task. Now, I'm proud of the final form of this document, but I'm even more pleased with the process. Everyone's contribution was vital and crucial to the outcome. It was an absolute pleasure and an honor to work with these 4 lovely people. The time we spent struggling to create something profound and deeply moving it helped me to survive the isolation and loneliness of COVID. and it enabled me to re-encounter and re-identify the values that bring my life meaning and purpose. Now, when I joined the Visionworks team, I had 3 important goals in mind. First, I wanted Visionworks to be a positive statement of our values. Often folks get the impression that West Hill is defined by what we don't believe or by what we reject, rather than by the positive values that we try to live by. And second, I wanted Visionworks to be clear and concise. I strongly believe that the greatest ideas are best expressed in a minimum of words. Simplicity and brevity are essential to clarity. People are more inclined to read and absorb a short document than a tediously long one. So I'm kind of proud that while the original Visionworks document 20 years ago was about 1,500 words long, the latest one is less than 600 words. And finally, after finishing the content, there is still a need for beauty, poetry, and the rhythm of language. So I think what we've put together is a beautiful document which clearly, concisely, and poetically states what West Hill is about. In 3 short sections, defined by the alliteration of the 3 Gs, grounded, guided, and growing, it describes the journey to which we are committed. John?
Thank you, Doug. Doug has very eloquently expressed the process, and I don't intend to try and comment further on that. But I had 3 words that eventually came to mind with regard to my experience of working in Visionworks: intimidating, interactive, and invigorating. Intimidating for me, because I had never met Doug or Anita prior to this process, and I barely knew Emily. These were new people, and we were engaged in a deeply meaningful project. It was a huge and daunting challenge, and I needed to get beyond that if I was to make any contribution at all. That our meetings together have resulted in lasting friendships, I think, speaks for itself. It was interactive working in Visionworks. Scott's already mentioned the various documents that were looked at, and there were many explanations about the history of Visionworks. And this meant that we got quite absorbed in it, and it was quite a challenge processing that. But it always led to useful discussion. When we finally got into the work of writing the new document itself, as Doug mentioned, Scott typed amazingly, and we would rework these sections of the document. Scott was so patient as we tinkered with the words, teased out to get the best possible sense of what we wanted to say, and that we all found our voices, I think, in that process, hearing each other, listening, and contributing to what is currently the current version of Visionworks. Invigorating for me because we found our voices, we were able to share quite openly, and we all became real and equal participants. I think it was the experience of being able to be open that was so invigorating. We eagerly anticipated each session, and I'm sure we actually all felt a sense of loss when we had finalized the document, knowing that these meetings were drawing to a close. After meetings had taken place, Anne would often ask me, well, how did it go? Very well, I would say. but it was always mentally exhausting because it was hard work, but so worth it. Doug has already mentioned that this current version of Visionworks is the briefest version yet. We think it stands well on its own as an expression of our guiding principles, our foundation. It's expressed in a positive way. It's presented logically, but it has also, I think, an element of poetry about it. But you can draw your own conclusions on these when you read it yourself. Because it is so concise, it lends the opportunity for things like today and next Sunday to reflect more on the breadth and scope of what we mean, and to discover how far reaching these somewhat almost 600 words are. The reflections on the individual sections given by myself, Doug and Scott are personal and they're not definitive. We will each interpret them in our own way. So before I reflect on grounded in life. Grounded in life for me is actually a multifaceted idea. It allows us to acknowledge our awe and wonder when we think about the entirety of life on this planet in all its diversity and beauty, whether we've experienced it in person or through the medium of television. It's also way too complex for us to understand. As humans, though, that is what we try to do, understand and make sense of it all. Some of us are better at that than others. Some have more technical knowledge and understanding than others. I'm pretty far down the scale as far as that's concerned. But so far as I know, there's no other species on this planet that marvels at the beauty and fragility of our planet and is capable of communicating on that. So these are some of our connections. It's in our efforts to understand that we are faced with the reality of our own experience of life. The realization that if we tug at one thing, we will find it attached to the rest of the world. As human beings, we are interconnected to everything else on this planet. Buying food imported from another country has to be transported with all that that entails. If we don't purchase that item, then jobs in another country are potentially lost. Our CO2 emissions affect the climate in other parts of the world. So we are all inextricably interconnected. And we might feel that as a heavy burden or responsibility. So here we are. We have on the one hand, the awe and complexity of life and diversity in our planet. And the reach of this idea is huge. On the other, we recognize how small and insignificant we feel, yet knowing our actions have a huge and sometimes terrible consequences, often disproportionate to our size. Once again, as far as I know, we are the only species that wonders about this ecosystem we call Earth. We are connected to people we don't even know as a result of our actions, and they're connected to us as a result of their actions. It's at this point that we start to think about what it is to be human, what matters to us, and how do we make sense or meaning for our own lives. Our approach in Visionworks is that we ground everything in life. We experience awe, we feel insignificant, and we live with the challenge of making sense of the reality that is our lives, both as individuals and together in our community and wider communities. Sometimes it's joyful, it can be frustrating, painful, depressing, healing, all these and many more. Nobody in this planet is unaffected by what is sometimes called the human condition. We have chosen to ground ourselves in the shared experience of being human beings, rather than one book, an individual, or a particular wisdom source. They may be sources of wisdom, but there is a wealth of wisdom beyond these which we think it's worth drawing from. Each tribe, society, or group guards its own sources, but we strive to move beyond the divisions associated with tribe or social group. For me, to be grounded in life is to simply acknowledge that the earth is our home and the world our family. There isn't a living thing on our planet for whom that is not the case. That being the case, I think we are faced with one more choice. How shall we live? We've asked Doug if he would care to reflect on a phrase or a word from the first section of Visionworks as we come to the end of this section of our perspective today. Over to you, Doug.
Okay. Good, I'm on. I can see myself. John, of course, has talked quite a bit about the word interconnected. And that is the phrase that I wanted to talk about also. Perhaps a little more scientifically, I guess. The very first sentence of the Grounded in Life section reads like this: with a deep sense of awe and wonder, we acknowledge life in all of its diversity and complexity as an interconnected web of relationships beyond our full comprehension. So this word interconnected, I find so meaningful in so many different ways and interpretations. Now, in its very simplest interpretation, all of life is interconnected genetically. Now, every one of the 30 trillion or so cells in your body contains a complete library of instructions on how to make every part of you: the color of your eyes, the shape of your nose, the color of your skin. This information library is called the genetic code. And all living things are built from only 20 different amino acids. And the genetic code that's stored in the DNA double helix molecules contains the blueprint for putting these amino acids together in different combinations to make the proteins that are required for life. The only difference between an oak tree and a mosquito is the blueprint contained in their respective DNA molecules. Now, an astrophysicist will give you a different interpretation of the word interconnected. They'll go beyond the geneticist to say that not only is all life on Earth interconnected, but all matter in the universe is interconnected also. The universe began about 13.7 billion years ago, and it was full of mostly hydrogen and helium, out of which were born the first stars. All of the other elements of life, like carbon, oxygen, and nitrogen, were created by atomic fusion in the hearts of these stars that lived and died before the Earth and the solar system was even born. So every one of us are composed of this stardust. Now, I can bring it even closer to home by giving you another meaning to the word interconnected. At West Hill, we are experimenting with a bold way of interconnecting people. We've created a hybrid church that will reach out to people all over the world. It's not easy, and the odds of failure are high. But we're moving ahead with courage and excitement into this new territory. About 2 decades ago, our minister, Greta Vosper, founded something called the Canadian Center for Progressive Christianity. And I was lucky enough to work with her on that project. We recognized that there were people all over Canada who had no access to a church that was as open and diverse and forward thinking as West Hill. So we created a Canada-wide network to meet their needs. We sent out emails and newsletters and held wonderful conferences every 2 or 3 years. But we did not have the tools to interconnect people that we have today. Zoom was just 2 decades too late for us. But look at what we have now. Greta's vision has been realized. There are people across Canada, the USA, Scotland, England, attending this service right now, right here, and interconnecting with each other. So it very truly is with a deep sense of awe and wonder that we acknowledge life in all its diversity and complexity as an interconnected web of relationships beyond our full comprehension. So thank you for listening to some of my scientific enthusiasm. Back to you, John or Scott.
I'm going to jump in here and get what they've been, well, I'll tell you, listening to the two of them, I think, oh, that would have been a good word in there. Oh, that would have been great. Oh, next time. And that's what it was like with Emily and Anita and John and Doug. Emily was so good at saying, I don't know what that word means. I think that's a church word. What does that word mean? And we had to look, oh, wait a minute. Everyone knows what, oh, we don't. And that was so good to hear that all the time. And then once we'd explained it, the look on her face was often, well, why didn't you just say that? And I thought, well, we were working on our words and working on how to express them. And again, listening to Doug, the scientist brain, amazing, but not just technical, but the wonder of it. And John, we think we got it right. Everything's perfect. Silence. John would say, I'm wondering if we could just look at it. And you either say, oh, no, and it got better. So that was just a marvelous process. So I'm going to ask the PowerPoint to put on. And John, if you could read this for us as it scrolls by on the PowerPoint. This is the first section of Visionworks, Grounded in Life.
Yes, my apologies. I meant to read this. I think the mic. Grounded in life. With a deep sense of awe and wonder, we acknowledge life in all its diversity and complexity as an interconnected web of relationships beyond our full comprehension. We recognize our place within this web of life. We are each affected by natural forces and human choices, and in turn have an impact on the natural world and the human community, helping or harming by our actions and inactions. From these realities, we draw our sense of identity and belonging and form our views on humanity, meaning, and morality. While we are aware of our limited perspectives and fallibility, we are also eager to discover, understand, and experience life.
Thank you, John. Could you go back to the first of those slides? The ones that, let me see if, there we go. I'm just going to give us a time just for you to read those words on the screen, or, I mean, on Zoom or here in the hall, and just let them soak in. And I don't think sometimes we realize the importance of that first section, which says, we're going to figure out what the moral thing is by looking at life, not by looking at any one book and saying, that's the only truth. We're going to look at life. We're going to figure out what to do about a situation in the world. We're going to look at life to figure that out. It's our basics, the realities of life. So just take a look at that screen, and then I'll say to move it to the next one for just a moment. But just a chance for us to soak in the wording of that. So go back to the first one, please. Is that the first one of those? There we go. There we go. Okay. Just take a moment in your own heart and mind. Thank you. Powerful words. If anyone wants a copy of the Visionworks, of course, it's on our website. But if you're not a website sort of person and you would like a written copy, just let us know and we will get you. It's very short now. Oh yes, I was going to say, the scientist was also word counting all the time. He was always getting us down to, so that's his success there, is he got us down to 600 words, but they're powerfully packed. So if you'd like a copy of that, please. Has anyone got any comment, any question, any comment to Doug, comment to John about what you've just heard? There's been a bit in the chat, but if there's someone that would like to address one of the two of them or both of them here in the room, let's have a time for that. Jean, if you could watch the screen. Oh, if you could put the gallery on so we could see the gallery. There they all are. Look at them. I see the chat there. So the names: Doug Richards, John McKechnie, Emily Trivers, and Anita DeRoche were the people involved with that. Other people sort of chimed in from time to time. But yes, if the screen would like to thank them all, that was a good idea, Laurel. So let's thank them
Amazing.
all.
It was amazing.
Okay, and also if you want a copy, an electronic copy of all the resources that were looked at to work with this, let me know and we can send that to you. Any other comments, any personal reflection, any thought at all? They've done such a good job, you might just want to soak that in for a while. Okay, we thought the best song to end this time together would be something that holds up the web of life.
Become a sustaining champion of West Hill United's work by committing to an automatic monthly donation. Learn more or donate now through Canada Helps.